Please give a warm welcome to Academy Award nominee, Cillian Murphy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here, Cillian. My God, you told me you've been answering so many questions, the same questions. Now the pressure is on to ask interesting questions. I've seen the movie several times, and his moral stances keep shifting throughout the movie. How difficult was it from your end to plot the journey of the moral stances and the shifting?
Yeah, I remember at the beginning when I was starting to research it all and read about him and go deep into all of that stuff. I remember I read somewhere that he was more riddle than answer. And I remember I wrote that on my script. I thought that was really useful. And then I remember Chris talked to me about that, his kind of moral journey, that it was like he was dancing between the raindrops morally. And you know the way, like in a normal script, a conventional script, the character starts out at this point, and the script goes like this, and they change, and they end up here. Whereas I think with Oppenheimer, it's very much like that. It's very unconventional, kind of in terms of the character arc. Mm-hmm. But that's really exciting to try and portray. And you know, when you have a director as absurdly gifted as Chris is, you just have to kind of lean into that and just rely on him in terms of the plotting. And we shot everything out of sequence, you know, completely out of sequence in 57 days, which was kind of mind-bending. So it was an awful lot of focus, you know, and prep. I kind of knew the script by rote, more or less, before I went into the shooting. Mm-hmm. And then Chris is a very, very focused director, so I was trying to be, you know, as focused as he was.
The character is it's full of contradictions. You know, at moments you're arrogant, and then he's naive, egotistical, and then, you know, selfish, and then generous. Was that fun for you to have to juggle those contradicting?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was the best. I mean, I love all that stuff, and the fact, you know, that he lived. I mean, he lived through all this, and oh man, there's so many things about this. You know, we shot in a lot of, like, what you just saw, the real Oppenheimer house. We shot there. That was the actual house. We shot in the real house in Princeton and the real house in Los Alamos. We shot not in Oppenheimer's office, but in Einstein's office in Princeton, because we could have a better view to the lake. So you feel all this energy, you know, from the walls. And then one of the questions that I get asked most, so maybe avoid this one, is what did you learn from playing Oppenheimer? And I always struggle with that question, because I don't go into work or playing a character to try and learn from them. I want to try and understand them, mm-hmm. and not prejudge them in any way. And I think the only thing that I may have learned is that he was just as essentially human as the rest of us, even though he was this, you know, 1 in a million genius. Chris called him the most important man that ever lived. You know, even though he had all this crazy processing power in his mind, he was all the things that you just mentioned. He was still deeply human.
Mm-hmm. The acting that you showed us in the movie, we're used to seeing actors emoting, but you do a lot of withholding. You know, can you tell us about your approach?
I I've always loved that sort of performance, you know, where more is withheld and revealed, because I think it gives space for the audience then in the performance. That's just a personal preference. There's a few other elements, like the script kind of demanded that because it was so much about his interior landscape, about what he was wrestling with and grappling with, and then obviously when we cut to those kind of, you know, molecular level images that Chris has created, I knew that the performance had to match that, and that it would be quiet, and that there would be room for the audience, hopefully, to kind of go with him on the journey. The other thing to note is that the script was written in the first person, so it was a truly subjective piece of storytelling.
Which is rare for a script to be written in first person.
Yes, I've never encountered it before. I'm sure every script now will be written in the first person, but I had never encountered it. And then the other factor was that I knew that Chris was presenting this, for the most part, in IMAX, so that's where he ideally wanted it to be seen, and he was shooting a lot of it on large format film. So in the back of your mind, you remember that it's going to be shown on like a screen double the size of that. So hopefully, if you think it and feel it, it will transmit.
I'll never forget seeing it in IMAX because I noticed that your fingers were, there's nicotine stains in the fingers.
Oh, I'm so glad you noticed that.
Did you went through the makeup of putting that on?
Yeah, our amazing makeup artist, Louisa Abel, we did that every single day, and I would get really into the detail of how it would, but then I was like, no one's ever going to see this. I'm so glad you saw that.
Well, when you watch it on IMAX, you do notice that there's so many things that every time I watch it, I notice something different. Like this takes place in a time period that everybody wears hats. You're the only person that wears hats. Everybody's smoking during this period. You're the only one that's smoking in the movie. Why those choices?
That's all Chris, you know, that's part of his genius. I remember very early on we were doing one of the lecture sequences, and I said to him, don't you think that everyone should be smoking? Because everybody's smoking. He's like, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. I just want people to focus on him, you know, and so that you don't think about it consciously, but subconsciously it does something to you, because he is the only guy with, well, he's got the coolest hat, you know, and there's not, and he's the only guy although in this I don't actually smoke that much. He's mostly holding it rather than smoking, because I think sometimes smoking on screen could be distracting. Believe me, I've done enough of it. But you know, so that's again just what Chris. That's one of Chris's amazing editorial decisions as he's going.
Tell us about developing the talk. It's very specific. How did you come about the way he speaks?
It was a kind of a long process. I mean, there is so much archival material and historical material out there on YouTube, but the distinction is that it's mostly him giving lectures, like in big arenas like this or halls like this, and therefore it's quite performative, you know. And he was very aware of his own theatricality and his kind of constructed personality, because it was very self-consciously constructed. So it was useful to have all of that, but I needed to kind of extrapolate backwards to get to this sort of how he would have a conversation between, you know, two people. So I worked on that an awful lot. An awful lot of it was just walking around my basement talking to myself for months, which I do. I find that really, really useful. And it's just because getting it, I think doing voices or accents or anything like that, it's like going to the gym for your mouth, you know? That's all, that really is all it is. And he didn't sound like anyone else. Like, you know, it is a sort of a period American, but it was influenced by his background and his privilege and all the time he spent in Europe, and the kind of deep interest he had in poetry and music. So it was, again, part of a sort of a deliberate affectation. But I remember the first day I did it in front of Chris, we were doing camera tests for the costume or something, and he was recording it on IMAX, but no sound. And he was like, "Oh, just do the voice." And I was like, "Really?" And he said, "Go on, just do the voice." And there's all kind of like technicians and stuff standing around. He was like, "Just do it." And that was the first time it kind of hit the air. And he was like, "Oh, fine." And but I knew it was okay then, and then off we went.
And then there's so much physicality in what you do. You know, you convey the frailty of the character. The way he walks is very specific. You know, tell us about coming up with all of that.
Well, he was really, really frail physically, and he was very self-conscious about it all through his life. And it was that mad contradiction between someone who is so physically frail but is so resilient, or not resilient, but so powerful intellectually. And that was interesting to play. So you kind of have to condition your body to find that silhouette that works. And then when you find that silhouette, it affects the way you walk and clothes. It affects the way you carry yourself. And I've spoken about this before, but there's another example of Chris's kind of genius. He sent me a picture of, sort of apropos of nothing, with no context. He sent me a picture of David Bowie, like during the Thin White Duke era, and then Oppenheimer, I think in the 50s or maybe late 40s. And the two of them had that very high-waisted pleated trousers, and both of them were really emaciated looking. And it took me a minute, but then I was like, I see. It's not just the styling and the costuming. It's these men are, again, like constructing their own personas. Like Bowie did it like nobody else in the world. He did it continuously. And Oppenheimer was also doing a version of that. So it was just these sort of little tidbits that Chris would give me and that I would kind of build on.
And for you to synthesize all of this, all the research that you had to ingest, and then to work on the physicality, was it a challenge for you to synthesize it all?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it was a sort of a staggering responsibility when he called me and told me the part, and you know, the fact that this man, like I said, lived and was an icon, and also affected the world that we live in so profoundly, and is so divisive, and you know, is the father of the atomic bomb and this extraordinary genocidal weapon, and he, you know, that's the Promethean nature of the story. And yeah, it was a constant challenge, but the reason that I feel like I could do it was because that I know Chris so well, and it's a 20-year working relationship and friendship, and I think he saw something in me that perhaps I didn't see in myself.
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned you've worked with him for a long time. You've done, previous to this, 5 films, but supporting.
Yeah.
You know, how did it feel all of a sudden to receive the leading part in one of his films?
It was the best, but then it was also kind of terrifying and exhilarating and all the good things. Like I can't do a job unless it's terrifying in some way. Really, it has to be like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but fuck it, well, let's try it. You know, that's what I love. But again, I had that. It feels like having if you're like walking a tightrope and you have some sort of safety net that is the director, that's someone that you know and trust, and is a master filmmaker. You just feel you can go for it. You know.
You have such interesting relationships with your co-stars. With Matt Damon, you have this sort of comedic situation happening. With Emily Blunt, is a codependent relationship, and then you have this Salieri-Mozart relationship with Robert Downey. Can you tell us about working those relationships?
Oh, I mean, the cast was just like staggering. And Chris would just casually say to me every now and then, "Oh yeah, we've got Ken Branagh, and I've got, you know, Gary Oldman, and I've got Emily Blunt and Matt Damon." But it was super casting as well, because all of these people are people of consequence, of significance in history, and there's no composite character. So he needed actors that had that weight, I think, and that presence. And then Emily is a dear friend.
You work with her in Quiet Place too.
Yeah, she's one of my favorite people in the world, one of my favorite actors in the world. I think her range just is boundless. And so that wasn't by accident that Chris put us as husband and wife, because I think he knew that there was a history there that you could get for free on camera. And then like Downey is just, you know, it was just like, it was one of the greatest experiences I've had working with an actor. It was electricity in the room, and it just fizzed working with him, even though we don't have that many scenes. And then of course, Matt just has that movie star wattage, which you need, I think, for that sort of a role. And he has that amazing kind of comic timing, as you say. And yeah, man, every single day, I would look at the call sheet and would think, holy shitballs. You know, every single day. So
Nolan writes in this movie very short scenes that go directly to, you know, to the core. What was it like coming in and all of a sudden you have one quick scene with Gary Oldman and then Kenneth Branagh and et cetera, et cetera?
Just keeps you really, really energized and really, really focused. And each of these actors came in and just crushed it, and not even all the smaller parts. Every single one of those actors came in and just crushed. Like Alex Wolff up there came in and just nailed it. That's just one. I could mention so many more. It just keeps you fizzing and vibrant and kind of available. Because you know, you have to come in and play with all of these extraordinary performers.
My favorite scenes are in the courtroom, in that very claustrophobic type room. You know, tell us about. So it was also your favorite scenes to shoot. What was it? Why was it your favorite?
Well, it was at the end of the shoot, and we were all a bit exhausted, and it was in genuinely, like, none of the movie is done on stage. It's all real location. So that scene for the hearing was this tiny, awful, depressing, bureaucratic room somewhere on the outskirts of LA, and we were all squashed into it.
And like, the IMAX camera?
The IMAX camera and all the crew down the back, and it was oppressive and stinky and like manky. But that's what it would have been like for Oppenheimer, you know? And we shot there for 2 weeks, and it felt like being a true company of actors, because everyone would come and do their bit and have these amazing speeches, and every day was just pure focus in there. And even though it was kind of unpleasant, it was just like, it was so exhilarating again to be in this tiny room and to be creating real drama with just like a chair and just the power of the words and the power of the performances. I absolutely adore that period.
Yeah, the antagonism, you were able to walk away from it.
Oh yeah, I mean, like Jason Clarke, who is amazing as Rob in the movie, he's the sweetest guy. We would have great chats, and then he'd come and just verbally beat the shit out of me. But I loved that, you know. And Chris through the whole movie just pushed and pushed and pushed in the best way possible, and kept pushing me and pushing Jason and every performer. Like, when you think you might have it, he'll just push you again, you know, push you again. I love that.
I know you've been asked this many times, but can you tell us about your working relationship with him? I think you alluded to just now that he pushes you.
Yeah.
But could you describe your relationship further?
I think it's when you. Someone said it to me recently. It's when when you know somebody that well and you trust somebody that well, you can dispense with diplomacy. Do you know what I mean? You know, there's no like, I'm going to say something now, and I don't want, I don't want to offend you. You're still my friend. It's gone because it's just straight to the work, you know. And so it's all that time and hours and like location work all over the world that we put in together. So when we get on set, it's just directly to the work. And he is extraordinary in the rigor. He's like laser-like on a set. He knows exactly what he wants. He's an incredible manager of time, which I think is the most important commodity on a film set, is time always. He is an amazing technician, but he is also extraordinary with actors. And even though we were working at this furious pace, nothing ever felt rushed. He's very curious about what actors can bring to things, and like, you know, we'll just find stuff on the floor. We don't waste time talking about it, but we will just find it. It's like a laboratory. That's how I describe it, you know. And but a laboratory with kind of old friends, I suppose.
Yeah. And last question: how did it feel to hear your name be called for Best Actor Oscar?
Thank you. Yeah, it was. I don't think I'm still right. Like, it's kind of mind blowing, huge. It's not something you ever can even fathom when you're a young actor starting out. It's just like it's like a different stratosphere, and but I'm truly humbled by it all, you know, and yeah, still wrestling with it, but just really happy to be here, I guess.
Well, you deserved it.
Thanks,
amazing performance.
Thanks so much.
And thank you so much, Cillian, for being
Thank you.
here.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.